This is the Motherlands podcast, a space for meaningful conversations surrounding women's reproductive health. Here, we strive to shed light on the complexities and nuances, offering perspective, insight, and a profound sense of connection. We aim to empower families through practical education and promoting health and vitality. I am your host, Keely Semler. One of the most significant aspects of maternity care is the ability of individuals to achieve safe, informed, and positive birth experiences, even within complex healthcare systems. Many people enter the healthcare system with unquestioning trust, unaware that financial and institutional incentives may shape the recommendations they receive from their provider. Having supported clients both within and outside a hospital setting for nearly a decade, I have observed that those who engage in proactive preparation and self-advocacy are better positioned to navigate their care effectively. Establishing open, transparent communication with healthcare providers is essential to fostering a collaborative care environment, an approach that is critical regardless of the chosen birth setting. Motherlands is an educational platform with a focus on the public health and well-being of families. This is a place to come to your own conclusions about what matters most to you and your care through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond. We have done the work to sift through the data and research to give you the most succinct information to help aid you in your decision-making. We do not peddle our own agenda or ideology, and we respect the integrity of all people to choose what feels the most empowering to their individual body. Motherlands offers a multifaceted approach to learning, providing a library of research, tools, templates, and self-guided educational videos. We also offer live group lectures and discussions so that we can grow and learn from each other's experiences. We offer 2 learning paths. The Wayfarer track is self-guided, where you get access to an entire library and all supporting documents, and the Pilgrimage track, which includes everything from the Wayfarer, plus access to those live group lectures and discussions. This option lets you connect with other women who are looking for support and deeper understanding as they go through their pregnancy and birth journey. If you're interested, head over to wearemotherlands.com and use the code MOTHERLANDSPOD to get 20% off your enrollment. Our guest today is Kate Granchelli. She is the founder of Modern Minders, which is a creative childcare and staffing company. I met Kate through one of my wonderful clients, and we immediately connected over something we both cared deeply about. That is the often unseen, undervalued labor of caregiving. In this episode, we dive into the realities of working in care, especially for nannies who hold so much responsibility, love, and wisdom, and yet are so often overlooked and underpaid. We talk about why it's so hard to have nannying recognized as a skilled professional job, how culture and upbringing shape the way families treat caregivers, the emotional labor that's baked into this work and why it deserves more recognition, what it's like to move through different family dynamics and belief systems, and how caregivers can hold strong, healthy boundaries while staying connected and kind. Whether you're a parent, a caregiver, or just someone trying to better understand what it really means to show up for others, this conversation is for you. If you'd like to hear even more from Kate, there's an extended version of our conversation available through our paid subscription called Behind Closed Doors. It's a softer, more intimate space where guests open up about the things we don't always say out loud, real talk and deeper truths. With your subscription, you'll also get access to short, guided meditations paired with field recordings from nature, gentle, grounding tools to help you return to your body and reconnect with the rhythms that hold all of us. You can find all the details at keelysemler.substack.com. Of course, you don't have to become a paid subscriber to support the show. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, share this episode with a friend, or tag us on social media. Every bit of support helps us grow and keeps Motherlands going strong. Thank you for being here. Let's get into it. So, Kate, we were acquainted through one of my amazing clients.
Yeah,
Shout out to Paige for
that
connecting
was
us.
great.
And I've just been so excited to talk to you about the overarching perspective of childcare and nannying. And I'm so interested to hear what are some of the most significant challenges you've encountered in promoting the value of professional nannying in a society that often undervalues this work?
Most of our clients really understand the value of having private childcare in their home. I will say the biggest hurdle for new parents to this childcare world and having the luxury of having somebody in your home, I think it's the perception of nannying being an unskilled profession.
I'm so glad you're saying this because I feel like the cultural societal norm is that childcare is unintelligent work.
Correct. I think that that is, I mean, I don't want to single out men, but most of the time men are usually the dads are like, please explain to me why I am paying this kind of money for someone to be in my home. And I know that sounds crazy because it's not all men, but it's usually dads. And, I love educating families just on the benefits of having someone in their home. But I think that that's the biggest one that stands out is that what we do as birth workers or childcare providers or just in the realm of raising children, unless you're a teacher, right? That you're an
Mhm.
unskilled person, right? Like you might have just come to the United States and you need a job kind of thing. That is a lot of times what the stigma is in people's brains about what a nanny is. Or they think of an au pair, right? Someone who's young, unskilled, coming to this. It's a really interesting vibe. But I think the biggest thing is that it's an unskilled sort of situation. It's kind of fascinating. There's so many layers to that. There was a time, and it's so much better now, where, families would call and ask for specific cultural races and things like that because they were thinking of it as less than, right? A Spanish speaking nanny because they think that it would be less expensive to have somebody who speaks a second language when it is completely the opposite. It is such a luxury to have somebody speak a second language to your child. Like they are learning so many things in that language acquisition. So I think many see nannying as an extension of babysitting rather than specialized professional career. Like you can't do this forever. And, many of the nannies that I know who are, the old school awesome humans are well into their 50s, 60s. I have a couple who are, close to 70 or maybe just retiring, and this is all they've done is care for kids, and they're incredible humans.
Mhm.
I think that that is a definite challenge for sure, you know.
Yeah, just going a little bit deeper into that, caregiving is a deeply personal responsibility if you decide to be a parent. And I do think that there's this great movement to outsource that. What strategies do you use to help your placement families and the caregivers or nannies that you work with? How do you bridge that gap?
Well, we're really big in advocacy, right? I ask a lot of questions. I think our firm is really tiny and only referral for a reason. I ran a bigger agency for a little while, and it was also very focused on relationships. And I think that is key to helping parents find their perfect person. Not every match is perfect. The agencies are here to vet candidates, make sure they are who they are. But at the end of the day, it's like who comes into your house that you feel good with. But we ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I ask inappropriate questions, especially if somebody's had nannies in the past.
What
Um,
questions do you ask? I'm curious.
like, for example, obviously the normal, like, what's your schedule? What's your budget? All of those things. But, like, if it's a new family with, like, a new baby, I'll be like, how was your birth journey? What was that like? Did you have a
Mhm.
newborn specialist? Did you have a doula? What kinds of things are you looking for? What are your expectations? How do you see this role in your home?
Do you feel that some of these families, like they have an idea of what they want? Do you see that changing or evolving over time?
I would say when your child is about kindergarten age, usually families, and we're really lucky, we have tons and tons of repeat families that will come back and say, "Hey, Kate, I think we're ready for a different kind of nanny." And I think that's okay. Some families will get lucky and have their nanny for 18 years, but the reality of that is very, very slim. There are women who only want to work from infancy to like 3 years old. That is what they love, right? And three, four, five is just too much, or just they really love babies, so they go back to a baby. My favorite question to ask families when they've had a nanny and if they've had a more negative experience is what wasn't working? I mean, being in someone's
Yeah.
home is so personal, and you see the good, the bad, the ugly, the happy moments, the first moments sometimes of certain situations, babies first everything, along with essentially strangers. So
Hmm.
having an understanding of the type of parent or the expectation of the type of parent someone wants to be.
And are there sort of common responses to that question that you hear frequently?
It's usually I want someone who is kind, caring, and safe.
Mm.
Really interesting because there's so much more to that, right?
What do you think is going on underneath?
I think trust is a huge thing. And I think there's a lot of parents who sometimes might feel it's a negative thing to have care in their home. I've had clients who to this day, introduce their nanny as their friend that just helps out when they need an extra set of hands, when in fact they have, someone working 50 hours a week. It's like a stigma.
Mm.
It's so much better than it used to be. I mean, just across the board, I think talking about what happens after baby arrives and how to prepare for that and what to expect. I mean, thank goodness that we talk more about it, and even pre-baby,
That's so
it's
interesting that you have, clients that introduce their nannies as a friend
yeah,
and not as a nanny. Do you
yeah.
think that has to do with like feeling some type of shame?
I think so sometimes. I think there are moms who really love toddlers and moms who really just are not happy when their babies are infants.
That
Or
makes sense. Yeah, I see that all the time.
I see it all the time too. When we are placing, newborn care specialists in people's homes, it's one of those things where, sometimes we have moms who, for whatever reason, are just, here you go, take the baby. And will come in and out during the day or night. And then you have parents who are really just kind of like, this is not what I expected. Like, I loved my child more when they were, talking and walking and doing all the fun things. Like, the infant stage is not for me. So that's always a really interesting conversation. But we see it, we
Right.
see all of that. Again, going back to challenges is sometimes when you have new parents as a professional on the other end of it who's talked to hundreds of parents and nannies and as an ex-nanny myself, you're kind of like, I'm telling you the truth, this is what's going to happen. It
Right.
could get crazy. You never know.
Yeah.
um, I think that that's another challenge is like trying to explain to parents that there are people out here that really do this for a living and love it you know
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the whole introducing your nanny as your friend because,
I know it's wild. It is such
well,
a wild stuff.
I think
I mean,
it could also be a sign of respect too, because I
yeah.
was the doula for this amazing family and I stayed on as their postpartum doula for a while. And
Mhm.
they wanted to keep me on as a nanny, which we can get into how that often happens with doulas. They
Yeah,
just feel so comfortable and
yeah.
confident with you in their home that they kind of want you to stick around longer than you really need to. And, anyways, I was with this family and they would introduce me as their child's additional mom.
That's amazing. I feel like that's more of a sign of respect, though, to be honest. I think that that's really incredible because that's sometimes hard. We've had families
Yeah.
let go because they're too close to children, too, which is a whole nother conversation, I think. But
Really? So a family has let go of a nanny because they get too close to the child.
yes, and it is, I mean, and it does
Oh,
happen. It's been often, but there are some like, things there. things that I think that has nothing to do with the nanny, it has
Right.
personal things. And it's difficult for us when that does happen, to try to help a nanny work through that. I had a dear friend who had a very similar situation, worked for a family for 3 years, and the family decided to go in a different direction because the mom was just like, I can't believe that I gave up all of this precious time, like
Oh,
daughter doesn't come to me anymore. She wants the nanny. And that's okay too, but there's so many different levels when it comes to the private world, like the doula and the
oh, I
NCS.
know.
I will say that every single NCS that we've ever placed has been extended, except for maybe the exception of there's been one that hasn't, but not for any of her own reasons. It was just because they didn't want that. They wanted a nanny only. Everyone wants their doula and their NCS to stay forever because it's like you are there holding the fort down with this mom in the most vulnerable time, learning and teaching and supporting in a way that is just really kind of magical. And
It
I think
is. It's funny
so
though,
much.
too, because sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, no. I'm
I'm
like going on a tangent.
No, I love it. It's so helpful. I'm just reflecting on the hundreds of clients that I have supported as a doula. And what I'm very clear up front before there's been any exchange of money or contracts is what my expectation is of our relationship or what is being exchanged here. And I think what's interesting, what makes, I think, doulas perhaps a little bit different than childcare, at least in my opinion, I think a good doula helps resource the parents so that they feel comfortable and confident not needing me and being independent and going on. Like I'm Mary Poppins. When I'm done, when the birth is over, everyone's healthy. I check in postpartum, feeding is going well, baby's healthy, mom is healing. Like my work is done. And I'm happy with that. I'm satisfied with that. But I think that sometimes if someone's not well resourced or there's not sort of clear expectations of what the exchange is and what that working relationship needs to look like and feel like for both parties, I think sometimes people might feel abandoned. And
Yeah.
I feel so empathetic towards that too, on both ends of the spectrum for child caregivers and also parents. And this is something I talked to about with my mentor who's in her 70s, and her mother went straight back to work and they had a nanny that was with them pretty much all through her childhood. And when the nanny stopped working for her family, she remembers crying and she remembers feeling like almost like she died because it was
Yeah.
like this person that was so significant just was gone.
Yeah. I mean, I tell parents when they're coming to us and they're switching a nanny or deciding to go in a different direction, or if it's a nanny that we've placed and it hasn't been great and they've been there for, I don't know, significant amount of time, I will tell parents like it is very important that you are very clear on what the end is.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if kids are of the age where they really understand, like I think sometimes don't give kids enough credit for understanding those types of separations, right? Or taking the time to understand that transition or orchestrating a transition where it's not traumatic. It's not a complete end, like you just said, like having that, remembering that she was like crying because it was like a death,
Mm-hmm.
having the thoughtfulness and the mindfulness to understand that yes, you want what's best for your child, but at the same time, you need to understand that there is a bond there. And I think psychologically, children, they need the time to transition, just as if we were needing a time to transition out of a relationship, It's the good ones, not the bad ones. The bad ones. But the good ones, and whether that be a friendship or, just having the support for a little person to understand why your nanny's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when clients call and they say they have a 4-year-old and they've had like 6 or 7 nannies,
Is that a
to
red flag?
be honest, that's probably not a family, and it doesn't matter who they are. Like for me and my company and like what we do, I'm not entirely comfortable working with a family like that unless they're open to talking about maybe the reasons why. There are families who have had a string of bad luck with nannies for whatever reason, but I would have to really deep dive into what that looks like. But 9 times out of 10, it's definitely a red flag. It's definitely a red flag, depending on the circumstances and whatnot. But again, that goes back to taking the time to really understand the relationship that family is really looking to have.
Are you interested in becoming a women's reproductive health advocate? I'm excited to offer mentorship to women around the world who want more guidance and support on this important journey. This 6-month mentorship gives us the chance to work one-on-one, where I'll provide personalized tools and resources to help you empower and support other women while also taking care of yourself. This work is truly needed, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. You can find more details in the show notes, and my inbox is always open to connect with like-minded women who are ready to make a difference.
I'm curious. I'm guessing that when a nanny comes to you looking for work, that you would do a thorough background check and perhaps check with some references. Do you do
Yeah.
that for families as well?
Reference checking of families, we have a kind of different situation because we're 100% referral. They're either coming from other families that are connected, and usually we have a pretty good pulse on the families that are being sent to us that way. In terms of background checking, in terms of
Well, you just mentioned like if a family comes to you and they've had 6 nannies and none of them have worked out, like,
pretty big red flag if a family has to meet more than 5 people when we're sending candidates. And then it's pretty big red flag when somebody is having multiple nannies in their home and the reasons are very vague or they're not interested in sharing those things. I think that there comes a level of, what is it, subjectiveness on our part to be able to read through the lines there a little bit. There's not a background check per se, but, I have had families who we've worked for and have said, hey, you know what? I have a friend who's had a really terrible experience with finding nannies. And that's sort of when my almost like a therapist hat comes on. Sure, I'm happy to talk to your friend, and usually either by the end of the conversation, we've said, hey, it's probably not a fit for us. But here are some tips if you're open or other avenues that I think that maybe you should investigate more that might help you in finding your perfect nanny. The reality of it is that finding a newborn care specialist or a nanny, it is really personal, right? And
Mhm.
not every family is going to be for us. Because we're small and I only kind of accept a certain amount of families at one time, I really focus on that kind of relationship building and really getting to the root of what it is somebody is looking for. So I can send them 3 people and they're like, oh my God, all 3 of these people are amazing. And it's a personality match. If it's something that has happened where they have some nanny trauma, I will definitely dive deep with them and have the conversation. When I do parent intakes, it usually takes a few hours. I know other agencies don't do that, but I want to know everything. I actually had a mom call the other day, and her friend had referred her and said, Kate's great, but you have to tell her everything. So if you're not willing to tell her everything, she's probably not going to work with you. And it just made me giggle because that's the truth. I mean,
And it's fair. That's
it's
fair.
fair,
If you
like
really want a high quality childcare provider in your home, you have to be willing to dish a little bit and be honest about
yeah.
how your home environment is set up. What are the
Yeah.
dynamic?
Yeah, and I say that too. I mean, I don't directly ask what people's relationships are like, but I will ask specifics about what kind of vibe. I mean, that's such an LA thing to say. What kind of vibe is in your house? How do you
Well,
like?
everyone has a vibe, let
Yeah,
me tell you.
everybody has a vibe. Or the best is like I always ask, I was like, are you more formal home? Or if they have children, I'll ask, does your house kind of look like a gallery, or does your house look like there are actual children running around?
Oh,
And
that's a good one.
yeah, parents will immediately say, "Oh my gosh, I like aesthetically pleasing things. We have a housekeeper that comes all the time." Or by that point in the conversation, they're usually telling me everything. Also, pets, all of it. Do you have a dog? Does your dog bite? Is there anything I need to know about that is a question I asked directly. Is there anything I need to know about quirks in your house that might be something that would drive you nuts. I mean,
Mm.
that could go down to even as crazy as this sounds, the diaper genie not being emptied out every night, or having water droplets in your sink. I worked for a mom who I knew that that was her tick. I just made sure that there were never any water droplets. There was never any like interesting tension on who left the sink on, like, because it would be a thing, right? And everybody's got their thing, good, bad, the ugly, all of it. Everybody's got their little things. And I think the more open you are on the entire journey, the more positive the experience is going to be for you. And when I have parents that come and say things like, I have no idea what I'm looking for, you know,
Mm.
I've been placing nannies and newborn care specialists for 12 years, and I was a nanny, and I was an educator, and I was, like,
Yeah, I want to hear about
thing.
that. I want to
So
hear about what your experience was like being a nanny.
my experience of being a nanny, and I think it really has shaped what we've created
Of course, yeah.
150%. So my experience is that I came from a background where I am a certified teacher from New York State. I have a master's degree in education. I taught kindergarten through 12th grade visual arts and English as a second language. I actually taught on the border of Arizona and Mexico for a little while, but before that I was a nanny, a high profile nanny, and I got hired mainly because I was normal and I came from a normal town, country girl, and I was thrown into this Vegas lifestyle and worked for this really incredible family, which is so funny because I follow the kids on Instagram now and they're, well into their 20s. Aging myself. But then I went back to college, got my grad degree, and then I taught on the border of Arizona, Mexico, ended up back in LA as a high profile nanny. But I recognized that a lot of agencies would send me out because at the time, people were looking for college educated nannies, right? And so I had both of those sort of things under my belt. I had a master's degree. I fit all of the things, but they kept sending me to infant jobs. And I'm not an infant nanny. I'm a
Hmm.
7-year-old. I love
Hmm.
first grade is my all-time favorite. I like first to third, and then I do like middle school kids too. They're fun. But I think that experience of being on the nanny side and being sent to these families really gave me this interesting perspective when it comes to now placing nannies, right? And I would have agencies who would yell at me if I didn't take a job or if I wasn't interested in a job. Now it's kind of like if I have a nanny who is going out for a job and she's like, you know what, I really don't think this is right for me, or if it's the family tells her something completely different, I'm the last person to say, no, you need to take this job. It's the best job ever. It's like I want everyone to be super happy when they go to work every day. And that was my experience is because I would be put into these homes where usually they were extremely high profile. They had some things happening because I
Hmm.
had that background, right? Like I had the background of being in situations where I had a lot of experience with special needs. I had a lot of experience with just being a teacher. Some families were like, hey, we'd love for you to tutor our child. It was a very interesting time of my life. And I just sort of realized that at the end of the day, every family is different. But again, I got to see this other side of the business part of this, where there were some times where I knew that maybe other sources weren't as positive on the back end for the family either, or I would get a
Hmm.
nanny job and I'd be there and I'd listen to them talk about their experience working with agencies and what that looked like. And some of them were just pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think a
Yeah.
lot of the families I work with, they talk about hiring a doula through an agency
Yeah.
and you go through an agency, there's some type of contract. Well, when the contract is over, you're supposed to like contact the agency and I don't know, establish another contract. But a lot of families end up just going directly with the doula if they want to keep the doula on. And it,
We don't.
it just seems like there's a lot of like sometimes bad blood between agencies and families.
Well, and I think we're in an age too where there are a lot of, people who do it on their own. I mean, the best is when it's personal referral. Like we're going to be 9 years old officially, right? And most of our jobs are still very much referral. We'll get an
Yeah,
occasion.
I basically work word of
Yeah.
mouth too.
We'll basically get a couple of like Google searched new moms, but we work with a lot of pediatricians. We work with a lot of doulas who say, "Hey, Kate, can you help my family find a nanny?" Or, "Hey, I work with this incredible doula in New York who obviously has her doula families and works through that process, but then they'll hire a newborn care specialist after the baby comes through us." But again, it's like it's very word of mouth and we help set everything up. I think sometimes, I mean, I know this, that I've been told that I'm way too high touch with our clients, but I think it's important. It's all about relationships. Like I want our families to feel supported from beginning to end. And I think
Yeah.
that there's that piece missing. So families do have bad experiences where they are saying, "Hey, we're not going to pay the agency to extend your contract because they had such a negative experience." I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had a mom in Manhattan Beach who texted me who said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I'm going to use a different name, obviously. I used Molly for a week last week. We were in a bind, and I called her directly. So just let me know how much I owe you." And I was like totally floored because that never happens, in terms
Mm.
of like a parent being so open and honest. And I literally wrote her back and I go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that Molly was able to support you for that week transition. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much for calling and letting us know."
Oh,
He was
that's so
like,
sweet.
"My loyalty forever will be with you over anything else. And I hope you understand that." She's like, "Are you sure?" And I go, "Absolutely." But it does happen, and I don't know what the answer to fix that is, but I think, there's usually a contract. We mainly place newborn care specialists. Most of those newborn care specialists will have their doula,
Hmm.
done, but we're usually after you.
Right.
We're
So,
after you.
l-
My best friend is having twins, and she's like, "You need to meet my doula." And I was like, "Absolutely, I want to meet your doula."
so
But
I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is
yeah,
that people that can afford a nanny
yeah,
are from a
yeah,
certain socioeconomic demographic.
absolutely.
What sort of tips or advice or wisdom would you have for someone that's listening that does not have access to the funds to have a private nanny in their home? How can people, normal folk like me,
Yeah, like me.
um,
Normal folk like me too.
yeah, how can we sort of find support, find resources, or people that believe in supporting children and their development and supporting the family unit through childcare? What sort of wisdom do you have?
I think if you can't afford to use a private service, I talk to lots of normal families that can't afford us either. I think the biggest piece of wisdom is really do your research when it comes to finding people on your own. Like if your cousin Sally referred their doula to you, do your digging, check references, do a background check, make sure all of those pieces are in order. Or a trial. If you have a little baby, have the person come and work in your home. Resources that they can use. There's a lot of .coms. I know we hear lots of bad things about them, but there
Oh
are
yeah, like care.com
many
stuff.
times, yeah, like care.com and things like that.
Oh my,
There,
I've heard some really horrifying
yeah.
stories. Yeah.
I will say a lot of our families who can't afford us will find people through networking groups, community groups. I mean, social media is our friend and foe. However, I think that there is an avenue for families to connect in their area locally where they can find good resources.
Yeah,
I
or
think,
even just going to the park and talking to
yeah,
other moms
going to
or
the park,
nannies.
yeah, talking to other people. I mean, I think community is huge. I think that is the puzzle piece that is overlapping in everything. I think
And I
having
think
unity is really
it's
important.
so good to talk to you because I'm totally going to be calling you because
Yeah.
usually like clockwork, someone will call me when their baby is around like a year and a half or a
Yeah.
year. And they'll be like, "Hey, Keely, do you have any resources for like childcare or daycare or nanny care?" And I'm always like, like there's a few places I would look, but I've been telling people, and again, I'm not being endorsed to say this, but
No,
like
I know.
next door, I'm like, talk to your neighbors on there. Maybe you can do a nanny share and then it's more
Yeah.
affordable.
Well, and it's funny you should say that. My favorite are when nannies call who are in our nanny circle, like we're nannies. And if they do not have the luxury of having the ability to have a private nanny, that is the very first thing I say. I say, hey, you need a nanny share. Are there
Hmm.
any kids in your nanny circle in terms of like your my gym, your mommy and me class, your, toddler music class that,
Or yoga
someone,
studio.
yeah, or you like who you connect with that also needs childcare, those are huge resources. I mean, like I said, social media is our friend and foe. And even on my end, sometimes, I'll have families who are like, hey, you know what? I met somebody great on, our community website. That's amazing. Do you want us to do their background check? Do you want us to get them fingerprinted for you? We can do that. I fully believe in safety and human beings being who they are, and we do this every day. And I meet people who are not who they say they are all the time.
Yeah,
I hate to even say this because I have
just
had a
say it.
I have had a couple of doulas who are amazing, and I've heard through parents they've sort of done the bait and switch where they're like, "Oh yes, sign up for our services," and then they're not actually working directly with the
Oh my
doula.
gosh, don't even get
Yes,
me started
and I'm like,
because
"What is happening here?"
this is kind of
Yeah,
why I'm a bit of a lone wolf because a lot of doulas like to tout that they have this experience or that, whatever, they have a social media
yeah,
following. That does not make them a good doula. And that doesn't mean that they'll follow through with what they
yes,
say
I
they
agree.
will do. And that's been my biggest beef is I have had clients who have hired other doulas for their previous children and they are like in tears telling me how they were abandoned or they didn't show up or they didn't
Yeah,
follow through or they were not communicative and that is so devastating and hurtful to a new mom.
yeah.
So I am totally right there with you. I mean, it's a problem for sure.
I used to be so terrified to talk to new moms, even at the other firm I worked at. Anytime a new mom would call for a really long time, I would immediately hand the phone over to the owner I worked for because I literally was like, this is really intense and I'm not a mom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Since then, it's been what, 10 years plus, and I am also not a mom. However, all of my girlfriends have had babies, and I'm usually the first call that they make, and they're like, "What do I do now?"
Same, same,
They're
same
like,
place.
what's the first step, And I'm so excited that my very best friend who actually I lived with briefly in LA and then moved back east with her and she's from a town over but we met in LA, which is so wild. She is in her 40s and she's having twins.
Oh my gosh, so cool.
Yeah, I have another friend who is also having twins in her 40s, which is wild. So two friends who are doing that, which is so fascinating to me in general.
Mm.
And it's been a really interesting journey watching them into motherhood. And I have another girlfriend who had a baby not too long ago, and watching that journey also, solidified that I knew what I was talking about.
Can you give some
More
examples of
than any
things that you've learned from your friends as they navigate early motherhood?
I think the biggest thing is that usually moms, when it's the first ride, right? The first step into this craziness of childcare and motherhood is just that there's a level of scarcity and like being afraid.
Hmm.
I think that those of us who are here, who are the helpers and who are in a space where we have the ability to calm people and we have the knowledge, we should share that knowledge. And I
Hmm.
take that every time someone calls us, even if I can't help them, even if they're rich and famous and can afford it and don't want to pay for it, like I still impart the knowledge.
I was just going to say, what is it about
It is
affluent people
okay.
that often don't want to pay for it? It's really interesting to me.
I think it's that interesting dynamic when it comes to wealth. It's kind of like I find like a lot of wealthy humans forget that at one point maybe they weren't, or maybe they
Yeah.
want to be not wealthy again, but they don't realize it's kind of like it's hard. Like as a nanny, when I was a nanny, it was really difficult for me to see like, hey, your kid really needs some counseling. Or whatever it was that was going on, but you just went shopping and bought a $20,000 Hermes
Right.
handbag.
Or my favorite is when I'm
you know,
working with a family and the partner is off on a work trip and the mom is like, it's so hard playing single mom. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute here. You are not single momming it. You
yeah,
are solo parenting for a brief amount of time. And there's a huge difference there, you know?
yeah. I have the biggest heart for moms who, and I've had a client, she's so awesome, who was really nervous. They had a NCS doula for like forever, probably longer than they should. Because you're right, the goal is that a good NCS and a good doula, it works themselves out of a job. If you have somebody staying with you at that point for a year, it's kind of like you just really wanted them to be your nanny, right? Which is okay, and
Which
sometimes
is
that does,
totally fine.
right?
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. Or they stay on as your travel person. But what I was saying is that in general, when they're kind of like, oh my God, I can't do the weekend myself. And you're kind of like, well, you're home, your husband's home, and you only have one. It's going to be okay. And, when they don't have that care on the weekend and then they get through a weekend and then they call and they're like, oh my God, we did the whole weekend ourselves. I mean, it's a joyous moment for me because, they can see that they're doing it on their own. But
Yes. And it's
you know
not
what I'm
that
saying?
deep.
You're like so excited and you're like, oh my gosh, see, you can do it.
It's
And
like, oh my gosh, you are a parent and you can do
yeah.
hard things. And
You can
like,
do hard things and you can do one night overnight. You can do an overnight. I mean, what's the
yes.
most your baby's going to wake up? 3 times you're going to be tired in the morning. It's going to be only one night. And you can do it,
And
right?
then
And
you're
if they
tired
do
in the
it.
morning and then you
Yeah,
have help coming that day. So you can
yeah,
go rest all day if you want.
yeah. But it's such an amazing moment though, where when they realize that they can do it, it's hard sometimes for me too. I'm the youngest of five, and my mom is like one of, oh gosh, there's a million of them as well. And they're all girls. She had one brother. My mom's in her 80s now. And the most fun part of what I do is that I come from a big family and we had no help. You know what I'm saying? Like we had an
Mm-hmm.
aunt or an uncle. And I think it brings it back to like a lot of the families that we work with, they just don't have that community. They don't have that village, right? They don't have parents who are living close because they might be in LA working in the industry and they started their life there, but their whole family's on the East Coast. I mean, that part of what we do is really interesting, right?
Right.
It's sometimes I have to chuckle because there's five of us. I don't know how my mom did it, but I mean,
Well,
she's the
there's
life.
five of you.
You
So
know what
I'm
I'm saying?
sure a lot of times you guys helped each other and you figured it
Correct.
out as
Yeah.
siblings
Yeah.
and you took
Like my
care of each
oldest
other.
brother, yeah, my oldest brother is much, well, I wouldn't say he would be so mad if he listened to this and said, Kate, I'm really not that much older than you, but I'm the youngest by 6 years. So they're
That's a
all much
gap.
older. Yeah, they're older than me, right? Very much. My oldest brother, I mean, I was 5 when I met his now wife. Like, so I was kind of like a little person when he
Yeah.
was a teenager dating and getting married. So, so there's that.
The conversation isn't over yet. We've still got about 15 minutes of this episode, but it's behind a paywall. If you'd like to hear the rest of it and show your support for the show, a paid subscription makes all the difference. Your support helps me cover the cost of paying my editor, providing for my family, and managing all the day-to-day expenses that make this work possible. As a paid subscriber, you'll also get access to a full extended episode plus bonus content where I share my personal reflections as a doula, midwife assistant, and a women's reproductive health educator. I talk openly about the emotional richness of this work, the art of caregiving, and share simple meditative practices to help you find calm, confidence, things I believe are valuable for all of us. Your subscription truly supports the continued growth of the podcast and the time I can dedicate to producing it. If you're unable to subscribe right now, there are still plenty of ways to support the show. You can leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our Substack, follow us on YouTube, or simply share the show with friends and family who might enjoy it. In addition to producing this podcast, I am a full-time birth doula, educator, and mentor. Your support, in whatever form it takes, helps me to continue this important work and share it with you. Thank you so much for being a part of this community, and your encouragement means the world to me. Thank you so much.